Hi, this is Holly, and I'm an art teacher, and I'm going to work today showing you how to create value and shading using one art tool, which is just a standard drawing pencil. And what we're going to practice with value is creating a range of values from dark to light, and it'll be versions of gray. By learning to use value and shading, you can create a more three-dimensional look to standard objects such as a sphere or an ornament, all the way up to adding value to things like pieces of fruit or a drawing of a car. So it's something that's very useful. So we're going to start by practicing making those different values of gray. And so in the value scale, we're going to start by pressing as hard as we can, filling in that square on the left-hand side. We're going to go over it a couple times, and our goal is to create the darkest black that we can make with our pencil. We're going to call that value number 6. It's the darkest that we can get. And if you haven't already drawn a long thin rectangle, let's go ahead and do that and divide it into 6 squares, and that's something known as a value scale. In the next square, we're going to lighten our pressure just a little bit and go over it several times because it's easier to make it darker than to go back and make it lighter. Our goal is to make a dark gray that looks different enough from the black, and so you can see the difference there. We're going to call that value number 5. So we're slowly getting lighter. In the middle square, we're going to create just a regular gray. So it's just a standard pressure. We're not really going to layer it much. You can see the difference between that one and the dark gray. And we're going to call that one number 4. In the third square, we're going to lighten our pressure, not skimming, just kind of barely skimming the page, not going to add any other layers. We're going to call that value number 3, and that's just a lighter gray. In the second to last square, we're going to barely skim the page, just lightly brushing, and as you can see, that's created a very light version of gray. We'll call that 2, and then 1 would be white. So if we look at the still life that I'd set up for us, I chose a simple object just to practice more on the value than on the drawing. And in this ornament, you can see that it's a sphere. We have a white area here created by the flashlight that I have set up. And the flashlight is our light source. It's coming from the right-hand side, and it's creating this area here that's called a highlight, and that's the brightest, lightest part of an object. So if we compare that to the value scale, that would be value 1, because that would be our white area. Then we're kind of looking for how it goes from light to dark, and so you're going to have your 2s and 3s in through this area. It's going to start to get darker into 4 and 5 over in here, and then 6 would be the cast shadow, which is the area that's receiving the least amount of light from the light source. So we're going to sketch together just a very quick sketch of the sphere. And even though it's the ornament, we're not going to go to the effort of putting in all that detail because we're most concerned with practicing the value and the shading. So I'm going to draw that dark just so you can see it. And then we're going to add the cast shadow here off to the side. And it's up to you the size that you've drawn it. I've just kind of shrunk it down a little bit. We know that the cast shadow is going to be up here in this top area. And so I'm just going to kind of lay that out for you so that you can see that. And that is the brightest, whitest part, which is our number 1 value. Next to that, we're going to apply value number 2, which is our light gray. What we want to have happen is for there to be a very gradual change from light to dark. And so we're going to just kind of allow all these values to show and progress slowly from light to dark, and that'll give us that three-dimensional look. So next to our number 2 value, we're going to add that kind of the medium gray there, value 3, and so we're just going to kind of add just a tiny bit more pressure. You should be able to see a slight difference between it and the number 2 that we just added. And then next to the 3, we're going to progress into 4, which is kind of that regular gray. We're kind of adding more pressure now every time as we go into the darker values. And we're going to go into the 5 here, kind of making ours a little darker than it's actually showing in the still life, just so that we can practice going through the full range of values. And we're going to save value number 6 for the cast shadow. Again, the cast shadow is receiving the least amount of light from the light source, so it will be the darkest area. So we're going to come in here and add value 6. There are many different ways of shading, hatching, cross-hatching, stippling. This one's called smooth blending, and it's probably my favorite method of applying shadow, but we can go into later videos on some of the different methods. So you can see now that we have a circle that's looking more like a sphere because we've added some shadowing and value into it. You can buy blending stumps at craft stores. Your finger works good too, just for coming in and kind of blending those all together. If you think you've gotten some of your values too dark, you can always come in with your eraser and kind of brush some of it out. And so it's pretty easy to come in and fix any mistakes that you might make along the way, but that's a good way to start practicing with value. You could do further practice on your own by having your value scale to refer to and setting up something simple like a piece of fruit, setting up a still life of your own, and adding a flashlight or a lamp to create your values and practicing on your own. The more you practice, the better you're going to get, and this is a very useful skill to use in a lot of your drawings. Thanks for joining me today.